Today I'd like to share a topic that I'm very passionate about, and that's selling with symbols. Now, this is not for only salespeople, so don't switch off if you think, well, I'm not a salesperson, because I fundamentally believe that everybody here has to sell an idea. You know, you have to get buy-in from people, so it's a very important subject. And I speak as someone who, early in their career, could hardly string a word together in public. And by learning some of these skills about symbols, about packaging ideas, you know, I've really become a more confident speaker. So it's really a topic that's very dear to my heart. I'm very passionate about it, and I'd like to share these three things with you today. Symbols are shortcuts, definitely. We're going to talk about that. Symbols are cultural metaphors. Being in China, a lot of you have come from outside of China. What's different? And symbols overlap human desires. Symbols can trigger action. So we're going to have a look at how they can do that. A little bit about me. I come from London, and you recognize this gentleman here. He was the last Hong Kong governor, and we both went to the same school. And our school had a motto, a minimus incipe, and this means from the smallest beginnings. And one of the things that I remember from my education was that small things matter. It really matters. So from being a young boy, I collected stamps. And I don't know if there's any fellow stamp collectors in the audience, but I was just fascinated by stamps from around the world, the different colors, the different symbols. And then as I grew older, I got more into football teams. And, you know, we used to swap football cards and this kind of thing. And again, the logos fascinated me. You know, the different types of logos and the symbols, what do they mean? And then finally, after I got a passport, I traveled around, and the flags of the world, again, were very interesting in terms of why do different countries have different flags? And you can learn a lot from the symbols that countries put out. It feels like we're drowning in information. We're always online. So if we're always online, we're always distracted. So one of the things that I've noticed is that people have short attention spans, and they seem to be getting shorter. Now, my name is Warwick John Fahy. I come from the West. So you would think that the third word is my family name, and the first word is my given name, my first name. But I've noticed in the last few years, people actually tend to call me John and not Warwick. And I think this is because short attention spans. People can now only process 4 letters. That's all the attention they can give. However, it's not all lost, because visual metaphors like Chinese characters help out. And my Chinese name always stays my Chinese name, which is pretty cool. So the thing that we're talking about here is symbols are shortcuts. They save time. If you get the symbol right, you don't need to explain the whole thing to somebody. An example of this is the quick response code. I can encode my whole life into this symbol. You can link to a company's website, you can link to your own website, you can put a lot of information in here. You can put everything about you in that code. So basically, it's a shortcut because basically you say less to be understood more. And when people have short attention spans, this is very important. You have to communicate effectively, efficiently. So that's the first thing. You know, why are symbols important? Well, that's why. We're going to have a look now at what are symbols and how does it relate to the China context. So we can look at symbols as signs, or then we can get into the interesting part of symbols as metaphors. So we all know universal signs like, you know, that you see all around the world. Once you understand the basic principles, the meaning stays the same. There's not much change. It's easy to decode. However, symbols are also cultural metaphors, and I think this gets us into an area that's very interesting. Now, you might have heard of a book called The Art of War, written by Sun Tzu a few hundred or a few thousand years ago, and this is basically a book about war. But today, this is used as a guide to doing business. And in the 1980s, a gentleman called George Lakoff basically presented a paper that metaphors are not only linguistic niceties. They're not just linguistic tools. Metaphors are actually linked to the way we behave. They shape our behavior. So if you think about business thinking, it's actually carried out with the same mindset as war. So think to all your companies. You have strategies, you have tactics, you mobilize resources. It's the same mindset. So when you understand the metaphor and how it applies in a cultural setting, then you understand how people can act. And that's what I'm interested in, is the outcome. You know, how do people respond to metaphors? So an example of the different way that different cultures look at the metaphor is a metaphor of a boss. So you have over here Germany. The assumption is that, okay, well, the boss, a little bit bigger, a little bit better perhaps, but more or less the same. But when you become a boss in China, the expectations, the pressure, the responsibility is much different, much greater. So understanding different cultural metaphors, you can actually understand how people can actually behave. Let's share a couple of examples. So you may have heard this comment before if you work in a multinational company. My Western colleagues are too direct. Now, why is that? Is it because they're rude? I would say it's not. It's because if you think of a major concept, a major metaphor in the West is a timeline. We think of time in a linear fashion. Think about most of the team sports that came out of the West. It's A versus B. It's facing off. And the thing is, when you're facing off, you tend to have very direct eye contact. You're looking out for each other. And then this is reinforced by eye contact being equal to honesty. So when you have very direct eye contact, you tend to ask very direct questions. So really, it's not a matter of being rude. It's just a matter of the metaphor that shaped our thinking is about being direct. It's like an arrow. So that's like why Western people tend to get to the point. But then on the other side, a common complaint from managers in China is my Chinese staff are so passive. I've been in China for 10 years. Chinese people don't seem passive to me. They seem pretty ambitious. They're go-getting people. Why do we have this particular point of view? Different metaphor. Think about the metaphors that shape culture in China. It's more like a circle. In fact, you eat food around a table, in a circular table. So the thinking and the mindset is different. You think of the yin and the yang. It's a circle that gives it the form. The book of changes. Time is seen more in a secular fashion. Time is cycles. So it's a totally different metaphor. And when you see this being carried out in society, so the harmonious society is a real objective of the government right now. It's a circle. They use a circle to try and transfer this meaning. So it's not that people, it's a linguistic or a cultural difference problem. It's that the metaphors shaping the behaviors are just different. And that's why you result in a lot of these misunderstandings. Different metaphors equals different behavior. An example, a friend of mine had a company, and he was basically hiring. So in the typical Western fashion, he was putting together a package. He was interviewing people. He was doing negotiations, and he couldn't understand why the young people he wanted to hire, the engineers that were essential for his business, were not joining the company. Because he was essentially using a Western face-to-face, it's man-to-man, we're negotiating, and then people wouldn't join the company. Because really, for a lot of people in China with the single-child policy, the parents get involved. Maybe you've experienced this. So you're actually negotiating with the family as much as you are with the person in front of you. So it's a circular approach, different outcomes. Successful companies like Alibaba in China, they understand this. They get the parents to come in, take tours around the company to see what the great things that they're doing. So it's a different approach. So when you choose your metaphor in China, you've got to be careful, because if you choose the wrong metaphor, you're going to miss the target. So let's have a look at some examples that are really working in terms of the metaphors. How do you sell your ideas with symbols? Well, there's a Chinese author called Xu Bing, and he wrote a book entirely with symbols, entirely with icons. And I could pick up the book and I could understand it. Now, I don't think he speaks English, but he basically put this together trying to express himself entirely in icons. He gets it. This is a very cool idea. But the problem is symbols change with time. The iron rice bowl was a very strong metaphor 40, 50 years ago. Some people are nostalgic for it these days. Weibo, that's the symbol of the moment. That's the metaphor of the moment. Free expression. Brands go up and brands get impacted. This actually moves stock prices and market share based on how people talk about your brand on Weibo. It's very important. And who knows in the future, maybe a virtual currency like Bitcoin could actually come along and create a different type of metaphor. So these metaphors are always changing. So to illustrate this example of time, think of the ubiquitous smiley face. Well, this came out in America in 1948. Think of the context. After the Second World War, the horrors of the Second World War, people just wanted to forget about the war. They wanted to live their lives. They wanted to create more wealth. They wanted to eat better. So have a great day was a very popular metaphor. You can see that in the American culture. The American's, personality is very outgoing. It's very sunny. Well, fast forward 60 years into China, 2008. China's had 20 years, double-digit growth. A lot of people have grown up only knowing wealth and income. So what kind of metaphors come out of that? Well, this metaphor is like Jiong. And this is an adapted Chinese character. And essentially what it means is sad and frustrated. Because what did the economic wealth create? Inflation, high house prices. You can't get a girlfriend if you don't have a car, an apartment, an iPad. Young people were frustrated. So if people have this frustration and you're trying to sell an idea to them, you have to take that into account. So the things that might actually work with this group of people have to connect to their human desires. You have to save them time. Time is money in China. Everybody, you say, how are you? People reply, I'm busy. But really, you probably think, yes, I'm busy too, but really, how busy are you? Because I read in the newspaper last week that a taxi driver returned a bag that was left in his taxi with gold bars in it worth 1 million RMB. Now, you're not busy until you've left 1 million RMB in a taxi and just forgotten about it. Who does that? Who's too busy to forget about 1 million RMB in gold bars? So these are some drivers that we could think about. Saving time, saving energy, saving money. So let's have a look. China was the first place I saw people checking in with a mobile phone. I come from Europe. People use a lot of paper. Nowadays, people save time. They use their mobile phone to check in at the airports. Very convenient. Everybody does it now. Popular online grocery shopping, Yihaodian. People are so busy now that you can actually order online at metro stations. So people are so busy that they'll order on the way home and then get it delivered. So again, it's tapping into people don't want to wait. Save people time. But in China, there's an interesting difference in terms of what works. Because in the West, we tend to engineer things to a very high spec. But sometimes less is more. And if you think of Lao Tzu from the Tao Te Ching, the Taoism Thoughts, very interesting book. And one of the concepts there was doors and windows cut in a house, absence make it work. Presence gives something value, but absence makes it work. An interesting concept. And you can see that around the streets of Shanghai. Have you seen young girls walking around with the glasses, with no glass in the glasses? Yes, I've seen it. The first time I saw it, I thought, oh, that's a shame. Her glasses are broken. Then the second and third time, I'm like, what's going on? Obviously, I'm a different generation. I don't get it. But maybe absence makes them work. It's part of like a philosophy. That trend didn't start in London. It started in Asia. There's a reason for that. What's next? Sunglasses without lenses, perhaps. So here's a little test. Whose slogan? Anytime, anywhere, anyone is Weixin, WeChat. 300 million users for an app. And they're burning up the profits of China Mobile because everybody's using Weixin. Now, why are they using Weixin? Well, it's very easy to use. You can chat, you can have audio messages, you can send pictures. It's pretty cool. Have you ever seen anyone using Weixin? It looks like they're using a walkie-talkie. The first time I saw someone using it, I'm like, you've got a $500 phone. Why are you using it like a walkie-talkie? Walkie-talkies are 1980s. But people use it because it saves them time and energy. Think about it. For those of you who date in the room, you're going on a date, maybe something comes up, you don't want to go on the date. What do? You send a Weixin message, I'm sorry, I can't make it. Isn't that so much easier than having to call somebody up and make a creative excuse, right? It saves a lot of time. It's easy. If you're more interested in business, like I am, you can use it for project management. I have people all around China. We have a group chat on Weixin. I'm up to date. I can do it when I'm ready to update on the project. Very cool. And best of all, it's free. You might have heard of the 4-Hour Workweek, Tim Ferriss. He recently partnered with BitTorrent. BitTorrent is famous for downloading copyrighted material. Why would he partner with BitTorrent? Well, I think Tim Ferriss gets it. He puts some material on there, extra videos, extra material that's not in his latest book, and 60% of people click through to Amazon. So instead of trying to take out legal action against BitTorrent, he used it, and it grew his business. But it's not only about free. It's like, what can make you feel special? Now, if I say painted nails, massages, and friendly service, let's eat hot pot. Haidilao. It's a hot pot restaurant. The food is not very good, but they give you massages when you're waiting. Women get their nails painted. I suppose men could get their nails painted too if they wanted. But they give free internet and free drinks. They reward you for the wait. They understand that time is money, and they reward you for that. And they're very, very popular for that reason. Now, I'm sure every IT guy in China would love to be known as the Steve Jobs of China. Who wouldn't? Nobody has heard of this guy, but some people might have heard of his company, which is Xiaomi. And essentially, they make phones. And the phones are somewhat similar to iPhones. However, they are half the price. So Xiaomi is actually saving people time because you can actually buy a smartphone twice as fast. If it looks like a smartphone, if it works like a smartphone, it's a smartphone. I may not buy it, you may not buy it, but a lot of people will because it really serves their human need to look cool in a faster time. So when we look at these brands and we look at these ideas and we look at these symbols, think about for your own product or your own company. Is there anything that, these disruptors like BitTorrent, like WeChat, are you trying to ban them? Are you trying to take out legal action against them? Or are you thinking, how can I leverage what they're doing? How can I disrupt my own business? When you're looking at Haidilao, a lot of customer service these days is using high tech. Everyone's using iPads to take orders. Salespeople are using iPads. What about high touch? Because it seems like high touch works. High touch over high tech. What can you take out of your product, take out of your service that will actually make it more appealing? And who can you align with? Can you align with a bigger brand, a bigger idea to make you, even better? So there's some cool things here in terms of using your symbols to make them more aligned with human drivers. Now, these filters that I've used today are just 3 filters. There's many, many different filters that you're using. Today you might use, food safety, air quality are big ideas. How can you link into those type of filters? Better health. Because ultimately, I believe that you've got to turn your ideas into symbols to really sell your ideas, to really get your ideas out there. Because people don't have time. People don't have the patience to listen to you. And China is such a competitive market that you've really just got to package your idea very simply and align it to action. Because symbols, when they're used well, are shortcuts. You can get things done faster. It is effective. If they're aligned to the right cultural metaphor, and in China you need to be spot on to do that, then yes, it can work. And finally, align them to the human desires that are most resonate with the people you're trying to sell to. Because China's changing, and we really need to rethink China. So today what I've done is share some of these symbols. I'm very passionate about this, and thank you very much.